The Bears finally made some history, not winning, not setting records. They finally fired their head coach before the season is over. Over 100 years, they have never fired a head coach mid-season, and they finally did it. They finally did it. Matt Eberflus is no longer the head coach of the Chicago Bears. They will now make Thomas Brown the interim head coach and also the offensive play caller. This comes off of the embarrassing loss to the Lions, not by score. I predicted it. I said Lions 23, Bears 20, but it was the humiliating way that they lost in the end. He did not call a timeout with 30 plus seconds left after a sack, wanted to try to get the play off, and then maybe use a timeout, and he just froze. They have fired Matt Eberflus, and let's talk about it. Let's break it down as to what led to this. We all kind of know, but what's led to this firing, and what's in the future for Matt Eberflus? This is Bear Down, part of the Coach Steve Show. Usually Zach Heilman is here with me, but he is traveling. He was actually traveled to Detroit for family. It is Thanksgiving time. He is hanging out with his family. So don't worry, Zach, this will come out of your paycheck. Don't you worry about it. No, this is an emergency podcast. I normally don't do this without Zach since we have agreed to do these podcasts. So this is an emergency podcast. So let's talk about this firing here. This has been called for a lot of people since last year. Last year, they wanted Matt Eberflus gone. I was on that train and also not on that train. I was on the train just because I didn't like the direction that the Bears were going. But when he took over play calling and ended up going 7-10, which is an improvement from the 3-14 in his first year, I can understand why they kept Matt Eberflus. Now, it's not all necessarily his defense. It's not necessarily, maybe some of the relationships that he had with the players. This comes down to head coach incompetence, and it comes down to the roster that you have in place now. A lot more was to be expected. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, you Bears fans that said Super Bowl, playoff clinch, like we're going to be guaranteed a playoff spot, you guys are absolutely insane. And I said you were insane when this roster was put together for a couple reasons. One, the offensive line still has to grow and get better. Two, the question marks at the defensive line. Three, you have a rookie quarterback. Four, you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, and you still had Matt Eberflus as head coach. You just not immediately go to Super Bowl. This not happen. So you guys that are all mad and up in arms because we're not going to the Super Bowl, up in arms that we're not going to the playoffs, I said that we should be competing in the hunt for a wild card spot. Not sitting here at 4-7, 4-8, whatever it is now. I can't even keep up. It doesn't matter. They're 4-8 right now. Come on. Did you really think we were going to the Super Bowl? But Matt Eberflus is fired. And the final straw was last night. Playing the Lions, you completely get dominated the first half. It was complete and utter domination. It was embarrassing to watch. And then they interview him at halftime right before he goes in the locker room. And he's all good. He goes, we're about to pop in the second half. Now, we started to, but it's we want to see you be mad. We've seen Nick Saban be mad. We've seen Dan Campbell be mad. Show some emotion here. They start to come back in the second half. Now it's 23-20. You have the ball. You're going to march down the field. And all of a sudden, undisciplinary things start happening. Cole Kmet has his second pass interference call on a mesh concept where he blocks a guy where he's not supposed to. Cole Kmet, what the hell were you doing there? You're a veteran guy. You should not be doing this. But that's undisciplinary stuff that can always fall back to the head coach. Then you get Jenkins hitting the helmet off. And then there's a horrible pass interference call on the Lions. Yes, I'm going to say it was a horrible play call or horrible flag. And then they get sacked. You got 35 seconds left. You have one timeout left. You don't use it. You literally see him on the sideline, and he is frozen. He's just my facial expression there was Matt Eberflus. Now, this isn't the first time he's had horrible challenge calls. I don't think he's won a challenge since he's been the head coach. There's games, close games. He doesn't win close games. He doesn't win on the road on Sundays. And this is just time after time after time that we see head coaching decisions that a high school coach, and no offense, there are some amazing high school coaches out there that would make better decisions than an NFL head coach and Matt Eberflus. That is what has brought to this point. Now, I firmly believe that you give coaches. I'm going to be all over the place here. So he's fired. Just a lot of incompetence there. His overall record. Do you guys want to hear his overall record? He's 14-32 as the Bears head coach. He was hired on January 27th, 2022. He has a .34 win percentage. It's the third worst in franchise history. John Fox has .29. Abe Gibran has .27. He does not win on Sundays on the road. He does not win close games. And it's terrible. It's just terrible. So let's talk about the firing. I don't like how the Bears have handled it. So I'm excited. Let me back up for a second. We could be excited for like the organization saying, okay, they've made the decision. This is just not going the way it's going. Bam. I hate talking about how coaches need to be fired because they have families and now they've got to figure out a job. They got to move. It's hard to move depending on what age your children are. But this is the NFL. It's billions and billions of dollars. And the Bears are worth a lot of money. So you have to win now. And each circumstance is different, right? So if any loyal listener has listened to me talk with Zach about the firing of a head coach, I do not love talking about firing a head coach. I just don't. I finally got on board a couple weeks ago because here's what I believe. This show is called the Coach Steve Show. I am an actual coach. I have coached varsity football for 15 years. I have coached basketball for upwards of 10 to 11 years. I have coached track for 7 or 8 years at the varsity level. I have helped the baseball program and softball. So I have coached and I understand the work that it takes to be a coach. And I cannot imagine the effort it needs to take to be an NFL coach. I am very, very, very blessed in that I am friends with college coaches all the way from JUCO, NAIA, all the way up to Power 5. And I know the work that they all put in to be a coach. And so I understand what it takes. I don't like the idea of me being fired, and I don't want the idea of a coach being fired. But as the fan, you're like, oh my God, he's got to go. And the reason why is because if this was the first blunder of a head coaching experience with Matt Eberflus, I'd be like, no, why are you talking about firing him? Like, give him a chance. I believe in high school, you get a long time to kind of prove yourself. In college, I think you need about 5 years or so. And during those 5 years, you have to be evaluated on your recruiting. You got to be evaluated on your wins and losses, obviously. But then is the program all around improving around you? In the NFL, pardon me, I would say about 3 to 4 years, depending on your situation. The Bears, when Matt Eberflus was hired, literally was in a rebuild. They had so much cap money. They really tore their roster down to bare nothing. And Matt Eberflus, his job was to come in and help be part of a rebuild and try to glue everything back together and tape it back together and start with that word culture, which I hate. I don't hate the word culture, but it's like it's overused. It's got to be like the standard. It's got to be about who we are. So he tried to come up with this HITS principle. This is what we do. This is how we play. This is how we do things. And that's just the way he felt that it was necessary to play, right? Like this is exactly what he thought. Cool. He's a coach. He's the guy. He's a good defensive minded coach. We obviously have seen that in Chicago and Indianapolis. But what has gotten to this point? First year you saw they weren't really competitive, but they're looking at going, look at the roster we have. But he also had some head coaching decisions that were questionable. Okay. Second year, it starts off really bad. The defense is not playing well. Offense isn't playing well. You have a new play caller. You had to hire a new staff. You realize he's hired like 5 to 8 new staff members since he's been there. Okay, but then he takes over play calling, gets rid of the defense coordinator, decides, hey, you know what? Defense is what I do. I'm going to take over play calling. And the team just started to play better. The defense started to play better. The offense showed a little bit of life running the ball and everything else. The O-line started to play a lot better. The roster wasn't quite there. I know they acquired DJ Moore during that time, so they make that decision. They had to rotate some. We had some quarterback issues. We had decent running backs. Like there was just some things, Cole Kmet started to come into his own in that second year. That's when he finally started to emerge and be able to catch some passes. So you started to see improvement. Now, during this time, people already called for him to be fired because during that second year, you had horrible challenge calls, you had horrible clock management, you had horrible decision making on what to do here, there, blah, 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 blah. So people were already calling him to be fired year two. From a coach, I sat here and said, I completely understand why you'd want him to be fired, but you've got to understand the evaluation of this. Is the team starting to improve? Are they starting to see guys stick up for their head coach? Is the locker room okay? Last year, I know we talked about has he lost the locker room, and they haven't. So I completely understood why you wanted to keep him. There were reasons to keep him, and they weren't BS reasons. They weren't what we're seeing this year of like, why have they kept him so far? They probably should have done this a couple weeks ago, in my opinion, because then the reason why his seat started to get really warm is because of the offseason moves. You draft a number one overall quarterback in Caleb Williams, who has played well. He played well yesterday. The first half wasn't good. Second half, he played really well. You have this receiving core. You get Keenan Allen. Cole Kmet is emerged as a pass catcher. You have Odunze. You have DJ Moore. You have Swift. You have two decent offensive tackles. So now this offensive roster is put in place. The secondary for the Bears is good. You get Edmonds from the Bills that can play well as the linebacker position. So that's where the pressure has come from. And saying that, okay, we've had all these roster moves. We're looking at our schedule at the beginning until we get to, Washington and everything else. How are we going to fare in these games? And then on top of that, how are we seeing the standard, the culture moving forward? They're going to evaluate his head coaching decisions and timeout situations and everything else. So that's why they are giving him some time at the beginning, and that's why they kept him, because you're hoping that what was happening halfway through the year to the end of the year, maybe he's figured it out and it's going to roll over. Now, we kept seeing this over and over again as the season went on until we started to win games. But even in those games that we were winning, you still saw some decision makings of like, oh, what's going on here? Winning cures all. Winning hides a lot of problems. Then we started losing games, and these problems start to emerge again, right? Caleb Williams starts to play bad. So then it comes down to a couple weeks ago, Matt Eberflus decides to fire Shane Waldron. He doesn't like the direction it's going. That looks good to the management of saying, hey, you know what? He's owning up to his decision that he made to hire Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron's going to be the problem. And boom. Williams started to play better. The offense started to play better. But you're still seeing these decisions by Matt Eberflus. And so they're starting to lose games again. And it just is like, okay, you're not seeing what you need to see. If you wait till the end of the year, you're going to lose an opportunity to try to talk to people that you could possibly hire as a head coach. It allows you, it wouldn't have allowed you to really evaluate guys out there and their coaching. I mean, you could, but that's kind of shady stuff like, hey, we'll keep them to the end of the year, but we're going to be snooping around behind his back. No, now you can snoop all you want and look at guys and their coaching stuff. So that's why this decision has been made, because you just weren't seeing the same things over and over. If they would have fired, if Shane Waldron being fired and the Bears start winning games again and they're winning in a good fashion, Caleb Williams continues to grow. If his head coaching blunders didn't continue, they'd start to make a case for this. But we're seeing is exactly what we were seeing in the first year, exactly what we're seeing in the second year, and we're seeing it in this third year. That's why NFL is called not for long, because I try to give them 3 to 4 years. In the NFL. In college, they get anywhere from 4, 5, 6 years, and you got to see improvement somewhere if you're the athletic director. And I'd compare this to the University of Illinois. Josh Whitman was hired as the athletic director. He immediately fired the head football coach they just signed not too long before that, but it was before he was hired. He brings in Lovie Smith, same type of thing. He wanted to tear down the program and the football, and he even wanted to tear down basketball. He wanted to tear everything down and try to rebuild it up the right way. Lovie Smith's job was to come in and try to glue everything and tape it together. That's what he did. But then Josh Whitman even saw the direction it was going, saying, hey, I know I hired you. I respect the job that you were doing. You're trying to do the best you could. I got to move on in a different direction. And he did it the right way. I thought it should have been done before he got fired, but the year before they went to a bowl game, so he kind of wanted to see where that would lead to. Same similar situation. Back to the Bears. They finally did it. Now we can move forward. But the problems, I'm telling you right now, guys, the problems are not over with the Bears. And here's why. We still have McCaskey running things. Like, do you got that? There's still that issue. Unless this is the defining moment that they are going to take what the Lions did and their ownership and say, you know what? Let's go. We're going to do things different. I just don't see that with the McCaskies. Yes, they're taking steps in the right direction and making this head coaching change. But do you guys realize what they did? Matt Eberflus had a 9 a.m. Zoom press conference. They allowed him to speak this morning. And in that, he said, I feel pretty confident that I'm going to be going in and playing against San Francisco. So either he's just saying that because that's a head coaching answer and saying, I can't sit here and say, yeah, I'm about to be fired. So I don't expect him to say that. But the McCaskies, Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, if you knew this was going to happen, why'd you let them do it? Why? There's cell phones. There's Zoom. You guys could, I don't care where you were at in the country. You could have hopped on immediately after the game yesterday. I know it's Thanksgiving, but guess what? You work for the NFL. You work for the Bears. I'm sorry. You hop on and say, we got to make this decision. Don't let him do the press conference. Oh, well, if we cancel it, they're going to think we're firing him and we haven't quite made that decision. No, we're firing him. And so that's why, even though this is the step in the right direction, I still feel like there's going to be chaotic things happening because of who's still there. Kevin Warren is not a leader, and we've seen that since he's been there with the Bears. Well, he was brought in for the new stadium, and that's all he's brought in there to do. Other guys have jobs to do. I hate that answer. You are the president of the Chicago Bears. The Bears right now don't deserve a new stadium. Maybe the fans do, but the fans would rather see product on the field. The McCaskies and Kevin Warren kind of show they don't care about fans. I saw Kevin Warren's leadership with the Big Ten, and people are talking about, well, he kind of was there for the name, image, and likeness, and he was there for TV deals. Cool. If that is his experience and you don't hire him as president, you give him a job and says your sole job is this, we'll find a president that's going to come in and demand a lot out of the general manager and then demand a lot out of the head coach, and we want to put winning product on the field. Kevin Warren is no leader in that. We saw it during his time at the Big Ten, and it really showed its head during the COVID times. His leadership during COVID was laughable. The way he handled the Ohio State stuff, too, was laughable. Just laughable. I don't care about the TV deal because at the time, the image and likeness thing happened during COVID where it really exploded in the transfer portal. So I want to hear all that bullshit about his leadership in that. I'm talking about the leadership of all those schools. I'm talking about the leadership of the Chicago Bears. I liked Ryan Poles. And this is Matt Eberflus is Ryan Poles' guy, right? Ryan Poles needs to look himself in the mirror and say, okay, and think about the decisions that he has made. And think about it, guys. Like, you bring Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren didn't hire Ryan Poles. You know what I mean? Like, so there's this dysfunction a little bit up there still. So we can't sit back and just praise everything right now because they finally made one good decision. Now, kind of like how you evaluate a coach, what improvements are we going to see now from upwards of the ownership, president, general manager, all the way down? So we cannot sit here and we can be happy for a little bit here today. I'm not saying we're not enjoying him losing his job, but when you look at an organization saying, okay, we're taking these steps, things weren't getting done. But you got to think about it. The way they handled the Waldron fire, that should have happened Sunday night or Monday morning, but they waited till Tuesday. This firing should have happened last night, early this morning. Don't let him do a press conference. Like, what are you guys doing? So we can't sit here and be super excited about this for a while, for as long as you think you're about to be excited for, because we still have that problem. So I am very suspect on the decisions they're about to make moving forward. Making Thomas Brown the interim head coach is the first right step. I am not on the bandwagon of that he needs to be the head coach next year. I am not on that bandwagon because he has to prove himself, right? Like, we're in a very unique situation. The Bears finally have a quarterback. This isn't going to be talking. This is just about the firing and the movement of the Chicago Bears. When Zach's able to jump on, we can discuss a little bit about the Lions game. But we all watched the Lions game. We understand, a lot of bad things happen. But the unique situation that the Bears are in, you have a quarterback that is just going to continue to grow and get better. You have a quarterback. You have wide receivers. We got to address the running back thing. I know Swift played okay, but we need more consistent from a running back. We need better interior offensive linemen, and we need better interior defensive linemen. That's just what it is. And we need more depth at the secondary. But this team is still built to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. Get the Super Bowl out of your mind. That should not be in your mind anymore. Don't say the Bears are going to make the Super Bowl. Even if no matter who they hire next year at the end of the season, we shouldn't say Super Bowl. That's just not going to happen. They are in that unique, so we're in a unique situation here. Thomas Brown, this is his audition for the head coaching spot. Now, with his play calling, we're enjoying the play calling, but as my buddy Zach would say, they haven't won a game with said play calling. Well, let's put that on Matt Eberflus and everything else. I get it. But still, some blame will go to Thomas Brown. But the difference between Eberflus and Thomas Brown will be the first one to tell you, yeah, I'm not getting it done, right? He'll be the first one to tell you that. But now this is his audition. I've already seen on Twitter, people are complaining about, well, why would you not make Hightower or somebody the head coach and leave Thomas Brown up in the box because he is calling plays well up in the box? Hightower's special teams blunder the last couple games, I think, kind of took him out of that consideration. And the way the players are talking highly of Thomas Brown, it's the right move to make him interim. But why you complain about him not being in the box? If you want him, if he's going to be the next head coach, that a lot of people on Twitter are saying, perfect opportunity. He's now in charge of play calling in the offense. He's got to decide who's going to call defense. And then he's got to make sure special teams is going well. This is the most perfect audition, right? When you hire a guy that's just a coordinator, yes, obviously he sees how to run a team. Like Matt Eberflus, for example, he's a defensive coordinator. So when he comes in, that first year, you're learning how to kind of control everything, right? What better time than have Thomas Brown come in and say, okay, I'm in charge of everything. This is his audition. And let's say the Bears go on to win a few games. That does not mean at the end of the season that you say you're the new head coach. I could see where the thinking process comes from because the team is used to him. If they're building around him, awesome. There is going to be that discussion. There's going to be arguments on both sides for this. My opinion is, where do you go from here? You have to look at the coaches that are out there. For example, people are not high on Cliff Kingsbury coming in to be the head coach, but I need you to think about this for a second. His tenure with Arizona was better than Matt Eberflus's. Okay. He then doesn't end well in Arizona. He goes on his little trip to try to reevaluate himself, becomes an analyst with USC. He has coached Caleb Williams or been around him at USC. He goes to Washington. I know Washington lately has been but they don't have that roster either. But with that roster, especially on offense, with a rookie quarterback, he's getting the best out of that offense. He's being very creative with it. So you have to sit back and go, here's a guy with head coaching experience, and he's a good offensive mind for these guys that we have that gets the wide receivers involved too. Like, he played quarterback also. So, I mean, like, those are conversations to be had if he wants to be a head coach. The other thing you have to look at is you have to keep a close eye on what's happening in San Francisco. If they don't perform the way they feel like they should, now I know they have injuries and stuff like that, but if they decide to do a Bill Belichick move and have a mutual parting of ways saying, hey, Kyle Shanahan, we appreciate what you've done. You've gotten us to the Super Bowl a few times. We were competitive. We kind of have to look in a new direction of how our roster is and everything else. Thank you. If that man is out there, you have to pick up the phone and call that guy like, hey, he's a great offensive mind. He's been a head coach successfully. Bring him in. Or at least try to bring him in, right? You also have to look at Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson doesn't have the head coaching experience, but he was a part of the Lions rebuild. Now with Ben Johnson, money's not a motivated factor. I don't even know if being a head coach is a motivating factor because he's very loyal to Dan Campbell. He's very loyal to the Lions, and he doesn't want to go somewhere that's a rebuild. If the Bears draft well and do free agency well, it's no longer a rebuild except for maybe the sophomore quarterback. That'd be the only time. So Ben Johnson would really have to look at that. But that's another option too. Like as a guy that's been a successful offensive coordinator, especially if they, I knock on wood, I'm rooting for them to win the Super Bowl. If they win a Super Bowl for sure, like, hey, Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, learn what Dan Campbell did in this rebuild. He's coming in and it's going to be not quite the rebuild, but it's going to be a guy that can come in and command the room and everything. People put Mike Vrabel out there because he's going to demand the room. He's going to be toughness. He's lower on my picks for head coach, but I still wouldn't be mad about that. But those are the things you have to consider. So those are the next conversations we're going to have. So I think the worst move you can make is already planning to hire Thomas Brown as your head coach because that's the safe route unless these other guys are available. If these guys aren't available, they don't want to come in, they don't want whatever, yes, then Thomas Brown has to be the next option there, right? So those are the next conversations that you're going to have. So a lot still has to be done with the who's in charge. I'm going to have a lot of questions and not be fully satisfied here or fully like on the excitement board train here because of all of that. And I think my buddy Zach, if you're on here, would say the same thing. We need to see something from them, right? And we're not going. It's you can't be that excited for or what they could do. That the Bears are known for screwing things up. So we have to see if they're going to make that decision and say we got to make do we got to go about it a little differently. So moving forward now, I think we can sit back and go, I want the Bears because we were all in this weird void where we want the Bears to win, but if the Bears win, this management going back to them doing things the way they've always done it. Well, if Matt Eberflus wins and they're winning games, it was because of Shane Waldron. Now we have reasons to keep Matt Eberflus. Now what I'm afraid of is if we win, oh, Thomas Brown's the answer. Let's hire him. And nothing against Thomas Brown. I like his play calling, but they got to win some games. Like they're right there. So we're going to see if Matt Eberflus, if they're going to win games without him. I think then at the end of the year, you allow Thomas Brown to interview for the head job. Like you give him that respect and say you can interview for it, but we're going to interview other guys, right? Like don't just give it to him. Like interview for it, interview other guys, kind of evaluate everything and see where it stands. That's what needs to happen next. It can't be let's just give it to him, right? And that's what I'm afraid of with this leadership that we have with the Bears. Now to slowly wrap this up here, I do want to say this, and I hope this was said to Matt Eberflus because I tweeted this out. Matt Eberflus, we do thank you for taking this Bears head job. You left a good situation in Indianapolis as as the defense coordinator. We appreciate you taking the job. We appreciate that you took a job knowing that we were going to be in one of the biggest rebuilds. You know, no depth on the roster, lots of salary cap money. We got to get some players. We got to build this up. You took the job. You went through the poop shoot the first year. You took steps to become the defense coordinator of our team. Got the defense back a little bit for most of the time here, where it was one of the top defenses that Chicago Bears is known for. You help us make that decision in drafting Caleb Williams, and we think we have a quarterback, you know, more than we did with Justin Fields or even Mitch Trubisky. There's some promise here, and hopefully he continues to grow. We appreciate all the time and effort you did put into this team and into the players. We just need to move in a different direction. Things are not moving the way that we kind of need to now. And you helped try to glue this back together and try to get us back to where we were. And we can't appreciate that enough. But we do have to move in a different direction. And I hope that's what was said to him. People can say he doesn't deserve that respect. Knowing as a coach, yes, he does. Because that is a tough job to take. So I hope that was said to him. And I do say that as a fan and as a coach, like I do appreciate the hard work you did try to put in, the changes you made on defense. It just hasn't gone the way that we needed it to. Things are now starting to go backwards, and we can't afford to go backwards. Our fans deserve this. And he's a professional. He's going to understand this. So I hope that's what was said. I doubt that's what was said because of how they handled it. But coming from me, that's what needs to be said to him. So Matt Eberflus is gone from the Chicago Bears. They still have a tough schedule coming up. They have this little mini bye week because they played on Thursday. Um, so they have a little bit of time for Thomas Brown to kind of get everything going. So this weekend, the players will probably have off, but the coaches probably won't. He's going to have to sit there and have meetings, figure out everything, get a game plan going. Next week, try to evolve his offense even more. And then they come into play Sunday, and they still have a tough road ahead of them for Thomas Brown, his new debut for being a head coach. They have to travel to San Francisco nonetheless. And so I joked Ben Johnson yesterday was like his audition for the head coaching job. And so 49ers, like, is that going to be Kyle Shanahan's audition for the head coach? But they have a tough schedule: 49ers, Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, Packers. Um, so we're going to see if any changes come. We're going to see if how they're going to play, and then just kind of keep our eyes and ears open for who else could they go after, to go for a different guy in the Bears. And so I know when Zach's able to come back on, when we figure that out, we're going to discuss the Bears. We're going to discuss who we think should be the head coach of the Bears. We might pick a person each week and talk about them. And we just want to see the continued growth of Caleb Williams, which we have. So thanks, Matt Eberflus, but it's time for you to go. And so we are excited, not excited that a guy loses his job, but when you look at an organization of what could be with this team, and that's where we're headed. Um, so thank you guys for watching or listening. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. Follow it on Rumble if you're on Rumble, the Coach Steve Show, because this is live on Rumble too. We're going to try to do that each time. So make sure you follow on Rumble if you can. Follow on X at Coach_Steve72, Instagram Coach Steve72, TikTok Coach Steve72. Appreciate support. Leave a comment down below. How do we feel about this firing? Where is it going to lead? Everything else. Zach will be back. He is hanging out with family. So again, his paycheck will be a little bit reduced from not being on the show. That's a joke, especially if Zach's listening. That's a joke. So thank you guys for watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve. We will see you guys next time as we continue to talk about the Bears. We'll update it. So thank you guys. See you guys next time.